The mission God has called us to in our Christian schools is tough. It's difficult. It's emotionally stressful. And so one of the ways that we can be resilient is to make sure we're taking care of our health. That boils down to things like exercise. It may not be our favorite, and we may feel like we don't have time to do it.
I wondered if you might say that.
But it really does come down to those simple things that we know to do.
Welcome to the BJU Press Teacher Edition podcast, where Christian educators are encouraged and inspired as we bring you interviews, practical ideas, strategies, and answer your questions about teaching in today's culture. And here's your host, Jenny Copeland.
Listeners, thank you for joining us today. I think I can be pretty confident that if you're an educator of any type, this topic today is for you. By the way, if you're new to the podcast, be sure to check out our episode library with over 155 episodes of In the Trenches practical episodes. Those episodes can be found on our website and on whatever podcast platform you use. You can also find us on social media. We're Teacher Edition Podcast on Facebook and on YouTube. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Teacher Edition Pod. I mentioned our website, teachereditionpodcast.com. You'll find all the episodes there. You can also learn more about our guests there and view any resources that they recommended well on the show. Speaking of platforms, wherever you listen, you have the option to follow or subscribe to the show there. That's not going to barrage you with emails. It literally just makes sure that any new episodes of the Teacher Edition podcast drop right there at the top where you can easily access them. All right, let's get into today's episode. We're so privileged to have Dana Davis with us today. Dana has had quite the diverse experience in education. So she served as a junior high public school teacher. She's been a fourth grade Christian school teacher, a homeschool mom, and currently she's teaching courses at both the undergraduate and graduate levels at Maranatha School of Education. I've actually crossed paths with Dana at several educator conferences, and I just really appreciate she shares practical, encouraging sessions every time for educators. She has both undergraduate and graduate degrees in education and is actually a licensed reading teacher as well. She currently serves as the Assistant Vice President of Online and Distance Learning at Maranatha Baptist University, alongside her husband, Dr. Matt Davis, who is the CEO at Maranatha there in Watertown, Wisconsin. Dana, welcome to the Teacher Edition podcast. It is so great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for this kind invitation. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so as you do various sessions, I've noticed that you focus a lot on encouraging and helping the educator, I guess we can say, as a person. And that's so needed. We definitely need pedagogy, we need strategies, we need technology, but we also need to take care of ourselves so that we can be the best educators that we can be for those that we serve and minister to. I know you talk about teacher resiliency. That's something I'd like to dig into today during our time together. This is the time of year when many people are stepping back a little. They're re-examining, they're kind of resetting, they're making goals, they're going to try to do better at things and such. And of course, educators are no different. So with the holidays comes a little reprieve in the schedule, or maybe it's just different craziness. I'm not sure, it's a little less schedule. There's family time, there's a change of scenery, hopefully a little rest in there somewhere. And some are just really looking long and hard at what they do. And honestly, some are just tired. They are ready to pack it up, to step back, if you want to say it that way. We've all been there. We know teacher retention has always been a challenge, and that there are so many factors that have driven so many out of the classroom. And I think it really worsened due to COVID. What are your thoughts on that? What's contributing to that increasing, I guess we say, turnover rate or leaving education?
Well, you're absolutely right. COVID definitely impacted teacher retention, but really it's been an issue for many, many years. The RAND Corporation every single year does a survey. It's called the State of the American Teacher and the American Principal. And it's a randomized survey to public school teachers and administrators, K-12. And that survey is very interesting in getting those results back to see what is the state of our American teachers. And so in 2024, the survey responders, 22% of them, that's a quarter of the responders, indicated that they were looking for a new job that year, that they were anticipating leaving their job as a teacher or an administrator. In 2025, that number dropped back down to 16% of the responders, which is more in line with what the survey had
Still a
been
lot.
seeing. Exactly. It's still a lot of teachers that are contemplating leaving the teaching profession. So when they drill down into it in the survey, and it's a very comprehensive survey, it boils down to about two different areas that are impacting teacher retention. The first is salary and wages, but the second is just general burnout. And so when you start to drill down into what is causing that burnout, it's a number of different reasons. Some of them are just a part of the teaching profession. So for instance, some of the teachers would talk about the job inflexibility. Well, that's to be expected. Students are counting on you, so you have to be in your classroom. And so some teachers would talk about the fact that they have limitations when it comes to getting to appointments or taking care of family matters. It's to be expected. Many of the teachers report that they're working an average of 49 hours a week, which is, of course, more than their counterparts who are in other professions. Now, there is the summer, and we always look forward to the summer, but many teachers are picking up a second job during the summer, too. So there's increased hours during the school year, plus sometimes additional workload in the summer. I found this to be very, very interesting. 46% of the teachers who responded said that they are so tired when they get home, they don't have time for any extracurricular, any kind of private life. When they get home, they're just exhausted. And that compares to just 13% of people who are in other jobs and professions. So we're definitely seeing that teachers are tired. But what was also fascinating is that the female teachers responded that they have higher stress rates than the overall response from their male teacher counterparts.
Interesting.
So we're really seeing that it's a combination of the time factors. We're seeing that it has to do with just the work environment, but also just an overall reporting of feeling stressed and overwhelmed.
Yeah. So you mentioned a term that isn't a stranger to this podcast, stress.
Yes.
You mentioned that stress is a factor contributing to that burnout. You just went through all those stats and we kind of kept coming back to that. Stress is different for everyone. It affects people differently. Dana, how would you define stress, maybe to kind of level the playing field there, and then talk with us about how you see it impacting teachers?
Well, absolutely. One generally accepted definition for stress, and there's several different definitions, but this one is by Dr. Eric Jensen, and he says that stress is the physiological response to a perception of a lack of control over an adverse situation or person. So there's two parts to that: perception of a lack of control. And as you mentioned, we all have different perceptions. We perceive things differently. If we walked into a room, let's say of 10 teachers, and we said, okay, everybody, grab your coats, grab your bags. We're going to drive over to the airport and we're all going to jump out of an airplane. Well, a lot of the teachers in that room would respond with a high degree of stress because they perceive that to be a very stressful situation.
Fair enough.
However, I suspect there'd be one or two teachers in that group.
Of course there will be.
Who would be very excited and not stressed at all because it's on their bucket list and they've always wanted to jump out of an airplane. Well, that's what we mean by perception. We all perceive different situations and people differently. So that perception can contribute to our feeling of stress. But it's also that second part, the feeling of a lack of control, where there's people or situations or workload that I just am unable to control. I don't have any say in this. So that perception of a lack of control is generally what we consider to be stress. We know that not all stress is bad, right? Some stress, some short-term stress can be good. I just had the students in my children's literature class take a Unit 2 test on Monday. Between you and me, I hope they had a small degree of stress.
That's right. A little motivator.
Because I wanted them to study. So sometimes stress in small degrees can be helpful. I'm thinking about open house night, where you got to get your classroom all ready for the new year. The parents are going to come in. So you got to have the bulletin boards and the handouts. There's a little degree of stress that comes with that, even if you've been doing it for many, many years. But then open house ends and that stress is alleviated. We're not really talking about that short-term stress here. We're talking about the long-term stress, because we know from a lot of research that that long-term extended stress over a period of time can lead to increased levels of cortisol, adrenaline, and we know that having increased levels of cortisol in our system is not good on our health. It can definitely impact the amount of sleep that we have in our overall health. So that's kind of what we want to tackle here today are some practical ways that we can deal with the perception of a lack of control or that stress that's in our lives so that it doesn't have to be long-term stress.
Yeah. I love that definition because it is sometimes a perception, perception's reality, right? To us when we see it. And I like the lack of control part because as teachers, often our personalities are, we're planners, we need to be on top of it. We want to do it right. So that when things aren't exactly, how we are hoping they would be, it can definitely add to that. So when people are stressed, they turn to many different things. Of course, coffee probably jumped into some people's minds. There's chocolate, energy drinks, ice cream, taking a walk, playing an instrument, exercising, although I'm not really sure about that one. That seems to add to my stress. We can laugh about some of those coping mechanisms that people are using to boost morale or boost energy, but they're all temporary. We as Christian educators, we have a power source, as you call it, a stress reliever that we can tap into to help. But honestly, one we don't tap into like we should. Talk with us more about that source.
Yep, you're absolutely right. The Bible kind of refers to us as earthen vessels, right? Imagine for a moment that you and I were in the studio together and I was showing you a beautiful piece of pottery. Maybe it was a beautiful picture that my husband and I brought back from our trip to Portugal this summer. And I was just showing it to you. We were admiring the craftsmanship. And then as I pass it off to you, something happens and I lose my grip and that beautiful porcelain pitcher heads down to the floor. And we would both anticipate that as it hits the floor, it would crash into a million different pieces, right? What if it doesn't though? What if when that pitcher hits the floor, it just kind of bounces a little bit? Well, we would be
Tremendous
amazed.
relief.
We will be relieved.
Yeah, and amazed.
And I might say, wow, I wonder what that pottery is made out of. And you might say, I wonder who the potter is, who made that. And I think that we see that beautiful picture of resilient fragility in scriptures. In fact, 2 Corinthians 4, 7 through 10, I think, is the best example of this resilient fragility that you and I have as Christian educators that we can tap into. I'm going to read it for us. It says in verse 7, but we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellency of the power may be of God and not of us. We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, cast down, but not destroyed, always bearing about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus, that the life also of Jesus might be made manifest in our body. That's us, right? We are troubled
For sure.
on every side. We are persecuted. We are cast down. But we know that we have strength through our potter, through our creator who has designed us for this mission of being a teacher that he's called us to. And he's prepared us, and he is the power source and the stress reliever that we can tap into. And he allows us and enables us with many practical ways to kind of relieve that stress that comes into our lives.
Yeah. I love that term, resilient fragility. Like that captures it so well. And the strength coming from the potter. We would go back and think, wow, what did they put in there? Like they knew somebody was going to drop that, right? Yep. And they prepared it. I love that. Okay. So at the beginning, I mentioned that you talk about teachers being resilient. You've started using that term now, as we just talked about. I love that term. It just even sounds like a hopeful term to me. I was saying it the other night, resilient, like it just has a brightness to it. In your experience, and as you've worked with educators, what are some practical things that you have seen or that you recommend educators do to become more resilient? We can talk about it all day, but what are some practical things that they could do?
And that's what we're going to hit on. They're practical strategies. And many of these strategies come from a book called 17 Things Resilient Teachers Do. So I'm going to touch on some of those ideas from that book by Brian Harris. But what's neat as we go through this book, which I think is a secular book, time and time again, we can see how scripture dovetails with those principles. So let's just hit it. There are quite a few principles that we can put in place. And you actually touched on one of them already. Resilient teachers take care of their health. It really is one of the number one things we need to focus on. We're talking in our country a lot now about making America more healthy, right? Well, in many ways, as teachers and educators and administrators, that is something that we need to focus on. The mission God has called us to in our Christian schools is tough. It's difficult. It's emotionally stressful. And so one of the ways that we can be resilient is to make sure we're taking care of our health. That boils down to things like exercise. It may not be our favorite, and we may feel like we don't have
I
time to
wondered
do
if
it.
you might say that.
But it really does come down to those simple
It's true.
things that we know to do. But how do we do it? We're busy. Many times the teacher is a full-time teacher. She's a mom. Has many different ministry responsibilities. Well, could just be simply doing things like when you're on recess duty, you're walking the playground too. Or when you're in the lunchroom, you're walking the lunchroom. So we have to find ways that we are putting exercise into our life. The next one is sleep. If we're going to take care of our health, we have to put a priority on sleep. That means sometimes grading is cut off. We're done. That's all I can do for today. It's going to have to wait for tomorrow. So sleep is an important part of this. And then we don't like to talk about it, but it's one of those simple things that is difficult for us to implement maybe, and that's our diet. And in many ways, we as a school could have a culture where we're focused more on health. Whereas a culture, we're finding ways that we are trying to build in more exercise. We're encouraging people to call it quits for the day. So administrators walk in the building and said, okay, that's all for today. It'll be here for tomorrow. Let's take off. Let's go home. So we have to avoid making excuses. We have to move and exercise. We have to get sleep and get rest. But I think as leaders, it's really important for us to promote a culture of health in our school. I think about my experience as a teacher. I could always walk into the teacher workroom and find birthday cake,
Oh, yes,
donuts, lots of
donuts.
donuts. And sometimes it's so kind because it's parents who are so thoughtful to bring
Sure.
this stuff in. But that's the kind of thing we need to start thinking through more strategically. It comes down to also the rewards that we give our students in our classes. Are we focused on those food types of rewards? Another thing that's helpful from a very practical standpoint is here at Maranatha, we have what we call a FIT program. And a lot of organizations have these types of programs where the employees can voluntarily sign up and then they keep track of their exercise, what they're eating, their sleep, and they then earn rewards. Well, why does Maranatha do it? Why do lots of organizations do that? Well, on a very practical level, we know that if our employees are healthy, then our health insurance costs come down.
Right.
So it's a very practical motivator to have a wellness program at your school if we can help to lower some of those health insurance costs. But also, we need to be healthy, and we know that our employees are going to be happier if they're healthier. So focusing on a culture of health in school is really one way to build resilience in our teachers.
Yeah, it's great. I love doing it together too. Like you said, making a culture of it. So it's not like I'm the odd one who won't eat the donut, or whatever, because we're all on a diet till the donuts show
There's
up, right?
Some good positive
but doing it together.
Peer pressure. How many steps did you get in today? And everyone's comparing
there
that.
you go.
Yep.
That's great. That's awesome. Okay, what else do you have?
Well, we can also make sure that we are practicing gratitude. And this was so fascinating. We know from scripture that we need to be grateful, right? And as we think about Ephesians 5:20, giving thanks always for all things unto God and the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, so scripture commands us to be grateful. But would you believe it that there's all sorts of research to support this idea of being grateful, of having gratitude, and how it then impacts our mental health and our physical well-being? Let me just share with you some of these different research studies. Focusing on gratitude stimulates the hypothalamus in the brain and the ventral tegmental, which I understand has to do with the brain's reward system and pleasure system. In other words, gratitude helps you manage stress, and it actually makes you feel better. So when we practice gratitude, it actually makes us feel better. Here's a study by McCullough. It says individuals who express gratitude are less vulnerable to mood swings. They're less moody just by practicing gratitude. When compared to times of stress, worry, and anxiety, the brain is more efficient and reflective when we are grateful. Ah, all of these things that we know to be good principles from scripture, would you believe it, have science to back them up.
Imagine
Yeah,
that.
imagine. So just being grateful and having an attitude, as they say, of gratitude can actually help relieve stress and make you less moody. They also say that grateful people are physically healthier and they sleep better. If you're a grateful person, you might have a better night's sleep, and that would be wonderful. So there's lots of research to support this. So what are some practical ways that we can have a life that is a life of gratitude and expresses that? Well, first of all, don't wait. My husband used to have a boss that said something to the effect that you should never squash a grateful impulse. So what he meant by that is you ever feel grateful, express it. Don't wait to express it. You probably know people like this. They're the first person to write you a quick text or message you and express their gratitude for you for doing something. Well, that is a wonderful thing to do, but it also can help you relieve stress. It can help you be healthier. Keeping a gratitude journal is always a wonderful thing to do. If we can reflect back and see how God has answered prayer in our lives and the lives of people we care about. Writing that thank you note right away, that email right away, that text right away. And I think if we step back for a moment, we know that it's true that when you write that, don't you feel a little bit better just by
Yes,
expressing that
we do.
gratitude? Well, there's science to back that up. And then as leaders, if you're a leader in your school, and I know that as teachers, you are always modeling and leading your students, I think it's a great idea to have a regular grateful hearts time where just as a part of what we do in our classroom or in our school, we're expressing our grateful hearts. It could be just before you go to lunch. Let's have a grateful hearts time. Let's everybody express something that they're grateful for. It's a great habit to get into, and it helps then to help us to become more resilient and manage that stress in our life. I have to say, there's no better way to start your day than to reflect on and to be grateful for the salvation that Christ gave us. If we think about ourselves and who we are, we deserve no good thing. And if we can start our day thinking about what Christ has done in our lives to save us, how can you not be grateful for that? And how can that not change your whole outlook on your day? So resilient teachers are grateful teachers.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I love how you kind of mentioned it's like working a muscle. We have
Yes.
to choose to do it and we have to work at it. We actually had an episode recently where he talked about he had to exercise that muscle and each day finding something to be grateful for. Something we've started doing here at BJ Press, and we spend a lot of time thanking the Lord for what he does and pointing those things out. But even in just regular meetings about logistics and things like that, pointing out the wins.
Yes.
So like, what is something that's exciting that was something positive that happened, something that you're thankful for, tying that into the midst of, just the everyday humdrum scheduling and things that we have to do. And it's really good because it makes you think when I go into this meeting, I need to have something positive to share, a blessing, something that's exciting. So
Yep.
I really like that. Okay.
All right.
What's your
Here's
next
the
one?
next one. Resilient teachers practice reframing. What do we mean by reframing? This is sometimes called cognitive restructuring. Basically, it's a thinking tool that helps us find alternatives to the situation we're already facing. Reframing is an opportunity for us to choose to view something from a different perspective. Reframing is actually really key to resilience. It's not ignoring the situations we're in, but it's just stepping back and choosing to look at them differently. Here's an easy example of that. I live by Milwaukee. It's about an hour from us. And the road construction going to Milwaukee is always a mess. So let's say I'm headed to the airport and I'm going to pick up my mom from the airport and I run into this traffic. Okay, here's an opportunity. Typically, probably what happens to a lot of us when we run into this traffic and we're in a hurry, we can actually feel the stress rising almost up our necks, right? We tense up and we can
Absolutely.
feel it. Well, restructuring means and reframing means that I step back and I say, okay, I'm going to be spending a little bit more time in the car. And here's an opportunity. What an opportunity for me to listen to some really theologically rich music. Here's an opportunity for me to pray for my grown children. Here's an opportunity for me to do some planning about what's going to happen tomorrow. It's very simple, But you know what? Once again, there's a great example of this in scriptures. You ready? This is 2 Corinthians 4:16-18, and this is going to be a familiar passage. But verse 16 says, "For which cause we faint not, but though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day." Here it goes. Here's the reframing part. "For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory." So that's a great example. Okay, this light affliction is but for the moment, but just wait, just wait. It's working things out, far exceeding. It says far more exceeding an eternal weight of glory. So reframing is a really practical technique. So how do we practice it? Well, first of all, you have to realize the situation you're in. Again, this isn't about denial. It's recognizing, okay, I'm in a tough spot here. Then it's about labeling it. Okay, this is a difficult situation with a student. This is a difficult situation at home. But let me choose to look at this differently. I think on a practical level, instead of saying I have to do something, we say we get to. I get to do something. Just that turn of phrase helps to reframe some things. Instead of I have to do playground duty, hey, I get to do playground duty, and then I'm going to exercise
It's all
while I'm
that
out
mindset.
there. How about this one? Repeating power phrases like, boy, I've used this one a lot. Nothing lasts forever, or this too shall pass. You may be having a year with some of your students. It's okay to say, you know what? This year's going to pass. We're going to get through this year. Reframing the situation gives you a new perspective and context. I think this is helpful with those students who maybe are a little bit more challenging, because if we can step back and take a look at what God has gifted them with, okay, we might call it stubbornness, but maybe we could see them having that as perseverance in the future, where they're going to be a strong leader. They don't give up. In the moment, it can cause us some stress and frustration.
Hard to see in the moment, right?
But if we can reframe that and take a look and see, okay, this child has been designed by God and he's a work in progress, and this quality could be a positive thing for that student in the future. So reframing is a great way to lower your stress and help you put some context to the situation that you're currently in. Remember, we said that stress is your perception of a lack of control. So if you can perceive things different, you can lower that stress level.
Yeah. Made me think of that little phrase that was so popular for a while, mindset matters, right? It's just all how you're going to view this, and reframing that is great. Okay. Do you have another one?
I sure do. I have so
Okay,
many
let's
more.
do it.
Okay.
Oh, good. Okay, keep going.
Resilient teachers. This is hard for us in ministry. Resilient teachers understand the power of no. Oh boy. That's a hard one.
Yeah, that's really hard sometimes.
It's really hard for us when we're in ministry, but it's important for us to learn to say no. And when we can say no to some activities, that will then lower our stress. So why is it challenging for those of us in ministry to say no? I don't know. It could be that by the nature of what we've been called to do, we're servant-minded and we genuinely want to help. We're kind of hardwired that way. I'm a teacher. I'm in this ministry because I really want to help. And so when given the opportunity, we don't want to say no to that. Sometimes the reasons we're afraid to say no is guilt. Sometimes we don't want to miss out on things. But it's really important that we take a look and at what is on our plate, for lack of a new and inspired way of looking at it, and determine if our plate can hold all of that. So let me give you an example. One of my responsibilities here at Maranatha is I oversee all of our online and distance learning programs. And so I'm involved with scheduling. So about 6 months before the next semester, I'll reach out to faculty and I'll say, are you available and willing to teach this online class? I am always thrilled when a faculty member says, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to teach it this next semester. You say, why? That's going to be more work for you. Now you got to scramble for a new faculty member. It's because I've learned that if a faculty member says no, it's because they have a good ability to see what's already on their full plate and prioritize. I would much rather have someone say no to me than to say yes and not do a good job, because that brings with it a whole new set of problems.
Absolutely.
So saying no in a kind and gracious way is a way that we can respond to the pressures in our lives and be more resilient. So how do we do that though? Because if it's hard, we kind of avoid doing it. Well, first of all, I think it's a kind thing to do to say yes or no quickly. I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you're asking for help on a project and they don't get back to you. Be kind
Yeah.
and come up with a decision, yes or no, quickly. And then it's always nice when possible to maybe suggest someone else or suggest a
Yes.
solution. I can't do it, but have you considered? That's helpful, giving some alternatives. And also, we need to consider the requester. If my mom asked me to do something, I'm more likely to say yes to that than if a third or fourth cousin asked me to do it, where I don't see them very often. So we have to consider the requester. It's saying no in an appropriate way, in a gracious way, can be a really valuable way for you to be resilient. In many ways, as we are teachers and educators, we're running a marathon, and we have to pace ourselves a little bit. And if we sprint our whole first year and second year, where we're going to run out of energy and we're not going to be able to continue. So we're running a marathon and we want to be in this for the long haul. And sometimes that means saying no graciously and kindly.
Yeah, that's great. Really practical. That's right where we are. Okay, you said you have
Oh, I
more.
do.
So do you have another
How
one?
about
Okay,
this?
what's your
This
next
is
one?
a hard one. Resilient
Okay.
teachers.
Oh, wait, I thought the last one was hard.
Resilient teachers manage their emotions. Oh boy. Did you
Yeah.
know that emotional intelligence is as important as traditional measures of intelligence? Being able to manage our emotions and having emotional intelligence is really key. And an individual's ability to reflect upon and appropriately express their emotions is a better predictor of success in life than traditional measures like high IQ. Whoa. So
Interesting.
your ability to respond to and appropriately express your emotions is really important. We're not asking you to completely avoid your negative emotions. You're going to feel things. You're going to feel sad. You're going to feel angry. It's about how do we deal with that? How do we handle things when we're in those types of situations? I was once in a meeting and it was I'm on the city council in my town. And I'll be very vague here so as not to give too many details, but I was once in a meeting during budget time and a department showed up and all the people in the department were crying. Why were they crying? Well, they were feeling overwhelmed and they wanted
Budget will do it.
they wanted a new person added to the budget. They wanted us to fund another person, but
Oh,
everyone was
wow.
crying. And I thought, there's no crying in the budget process. But sometimes those emotions are overwhelming. So how can we handle it? Well, we need to be careful that we don't use our emotions in a manipulative way. And so I think it's important to recognize that I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry. Then you have to take some action. So one thing to do is what we've already discussed, reframe the situation. Okay, I'm feeling sad here, but let me get some perspective. This isn't going to last forever. The individual probably didn't realize that what they said was going to hit me this way. So reframe it. Another thing to do is just imagine. So just imagine what will happen when I get to break, spring break, summer break. That's going to be a wonderful time. Um, and taking a breath. I don't know if did your mom teach you to take a deep breath and count to 10 to manage your
I
emotions?
have heard that a lot growing up.
My
Yes.
mom did that. And you think, well, that's just a simple, it can't work. No, it works. Take a deep breath, count to 10. What does that allow you to do? It allows a moment for those positive emotions to right the ship and for
Yeah.
you to have a moment to say, okay, let me back up. I've reframed and I'm going to handle these emotions appropriately. So
Yeah.
resilient teachers manage their emotions appropriately.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I know we're getting really close on time, but do you have any others you wanted to slide in there as well?
I sure do. So let us
Okay.
just hit on maybe two more. Resilient
Okay, perfect.
teachers, they get themselves organized. So I want you to think about your desk, your classroom, even your home, your laundry pile. Research indicates that disorganized and cluttered environments lead to more impulsive behavior, less focus, less persistence in finishing tasks, and clutter makes you a quitter. So impulse control, that could factor into our health where we're more likely to overeat. So we have to organize our lives. So take a moment, start now, think small, Ignore excuses and start cleaning up. Whether it's just making sure you leave your desk neat for the next day, making sure you take some time at home to get things organized. You're probably like me. You just can't think when it's too cluttered. Well, that's
Right.
normal. That's kind of how we're wired. And so when we take some time to organize our lives, that helps to lower our stress, which makes us more resilient. But I think I really want to end on this last one. This last
Okay.
one says resilient teachers laugh and have fun with their students. Don't forget the joy that got you into the teaching profession in the first place. Laughter, play, and joy goes a long way in managing stress. Lots of laughter, lots of happiness, lots of joy. They actually have done research studies, and it shows that the teacher's stress is contagious to the students. The students feel stressed when
Sure.
the
Yeah,
teacher
makes
feels
sense.
stressed. And so happiness is also contagious. And so finding opportunities for you to reframe, get some context, and just laugh and enjoy. Remember why you got into the teaching profession in the first place. All of these are just practical ways that we can become more resilient and ways that we can really reduce the stress. We're on mission here. God has called us to something important. And so there are ways that we can manage things and organize our lives to make us more effective in that ministry.
Yeah, these are fantastic. So practical. I'm also going to put that book, the name of the book, down in our show notes as well, so that they can follow up on that, because I think we could go on for a couple
Yes, we
hours
probably
talking
could.
about this. This is very fantastic. We definitely need resiliency. Our coworkers and students need us to be resilient. Like you said, we're on mission here. We can't fix everything, but maybe if each of us picked one thing off this list that you gave us today and just focused on that this month, and then maybe we could add another one next month, we would see that positive impact in our lives. A new calendar year is here. A new semester is coming. It's a fresh start, and it's a great time to just start working on some of these areas. Again, we can't bite them all off today and take care of all of them, but even just starting with one. Dana, this could not have been more perfect for today. Thank you so much for these just really encouraging, really practical suggestions, and really for challenging us. These are things we know, but we let slip. And this was just a great challenge as we start a new year. It's been such a blessing having you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it too.
Great. And listeners, I hope you're encouraged as you face 2026 and a new semester. Remember, you have a power source and a stress reliever that is far more powerful than anything that this world has to offer. Let's start 2026 as resilient educators, ready to impact these young people, the young people that the Lord has entrusted to us just for the next few months. As we close out this episode, of course, another reminder to stop by teachereditionpodcast.com and learn more about the show and to submit questions for our upcoming episodes. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and go follow us on social media. Now, it's time to get back to your day. But again, it's not just any day. Every day in the classroom is your day to impact and inspire through God's power and through His grace working in you. Now, go do what God has called you to do.